Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. Welcome to the Ethan Allen Homestead Museum. My name is Angie Grove. I'm the director here at the museum, and you are here for the Thomas M. Achenbach Memorial History Talk, the inaugural Thomas M. Achenbach Memorial History Talk, which we're very excited to have. We'll have a few words in a moment more about the namesake of this new lecture program. But first, I would like to say a few words, logistical things to get them out of the way. Most importantly, we want to thank our sponsors of the program. We have two really great community sponsors who are helping us keep this program up, and that is the North Country Federal Credit Union and Burlington Heritage Ford and Toyota, in addition to the main sponsors of tonight's program, which are the friends and family of Thomas M. Achenbach, which we'll learn more about in a minute. Second logistical thing I need to get out of the way is I want to tell you about the upcoming events and get those dates out there for you to put in your calendars. Most pressing of which is the event next month is our Fanny Allen Weekend. It's going to be on August 16th and 17th. It's a Saturday and Sunday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. both days. We are partnering with the Chittenden County Historical Society for their 60th anniversary, and it's going to be a big community party with partners from Vermont Historical Society, which is our speakers organization, Burlington History and Culture Center, from some of the local historical societies, and there's going to be everything from arts and crafts projects to touch a truck, an antique truck. There's a history prize wheel, and there's family-friendly activities, everything from how to read cursive to how to preserve your family photos, as well as guided tours of this historic property. And we're also doing our flax harvest that weekend as well. And we do have two guest speakers that weekend. On Saturday, August 16th at 2 p.m., Wes Testo, who's the director of the Pringle Herbarium at the University of Vermont, will be giving a talk about Fanny Allen Penniman and her importance in the history of Vermont's botany studies and her herbarium, which is the oldest Vermont-made herbarium in their collection. And then on Sunday, August 17th at 2 p.m., former Vermont Governor Jim Douglas will be giving a presentation called Vermont, the State with the Outsized Influence in Our Country. So you'll want to make sure to come for all of those family-friendly activities and those great talks as well. Okay, so with that, I'm going to pass the stage over to a dear friend of the museum, a longtime volunteer, and the brother of the namesake of this program, Mr. John Achenbach.
Thank you, Angie. So again, I was going to start off by asking who, or you might be thinking, who is this Tom Achenbach? Well, once again, I am his brother, and we have his son sitting right back here, and we have one of his nieces over here, if she'll raise her hand, and two of her now growing sons, Reuben and Rohan, right beside them. And then you might ask, why a legacy talk here at the homestead for Thomas Achenbach? Well, number one, he was a noted professor of psychology and psychiatry at the University of Vermont. He was also a big homestead supporter. Every one of these Sunday talks, you could find him sitting right there where Ginger's sitting, front and center, principally because he was a little hard of hearing, so you'd find him right up there. And he'd spend the whole talk formulating a stumper question for the speaker at the end. Thank goodness he's not here now to oversee my talk. Also, Tom, like Ethan, was up from Connecticut. Tom from Wethersfield, Ethan from Litchfield. And he came to Vermont like Ethan, kind of left in a hush from or hurry from Connecticut, and they both fit right in Vermont. They fit right in. Tom was also a supporter. He's the guy that brought us the Fanny Allen movie that we show here. He helped fund it, and he found the director for us, John Allen. What else can I say about him? Oh, well, legacy talk. If you too would like a legacy talk in the name of one of your favorite people, you can do that. We have 11 months of talks. We have 2 months spoken for this month, the Ralph Nading Hill talk next month. See Angie if you have somebody in mind that you'd like to honor. Angie, the speaker.
Thank you, John. Okay. I do just want to say if we do have anyone enter late, we are going to be directing them to the open seats. So please, I appreciate your flexibility with kind of, letting them cut through if that is the case. We want to make sure we fill those seats before we have to add more over here. So I just want to say that because I know there's always someone who comes late who feels so bad about having to walk in front of all of you, but I know that you all are flexible, so thank you. Okay. So today we have the honor of a very special talk that I'm really looking forward to. I'm hoping that I gain quite a bit of an education on this because Ethan Allen is one of those figures who's as much a mythical figure as he is a historical figure, right? There are a lot of stories about him that, like, he fought a bear barehanded and won, right? That not sure if that's historical as much as it's probably mythical. And the same goes with a lot of artifacts. We get questions here at the museum all the time about artifacts that may or may not have been owned by Ethan Allen. And as many of you might know, this historic site has been a living and working farm for, well, about 600 years since the Abenaki were farming here, up to the Allens, and then even to today, it is still being farmed. But it was a primarily farmed through the 1970s and into the 1980s before it became a museum. Because of that, a lot of the Ethan Allen artifacts were donated to places like the Vermont Historical Society or Fort Ticonderoga, whose origins go much further back than the 1980s. So most of the objects that may or may not have been owned by Ethan Allen are in the possession of the state of Vermont's Historical Society, where our speaker works. And there's always the mythology of whether or not it was truly owned by Ethan Allen. So I think we're going to find out today. Maybe some clues, maybe some answers. Okay, so let me introduce you to today's speaker for our program. Catherine F. Grant, she is the collections manager at the Vermont Historical Society. Prior to joining the team at VHS, she was a project archivist at Vanderbilt University Special Collections and the University Archives. And she was the curatorial fellow for the trustees of reservations in Massachusetts at 2 of their North Shore historic house properties as well. She holds a Master of Arts degree from the Winterthur Program in American Material Culture, and if that isn't enough, she also has a Bachelor of Arts degree from Tufts University in Art History and Italian Studies. She also has a lifelong passion for American decorative arts, including New England material culture as a specific area of interest, which has inspired her to pursue a broad range of research projects from classical early furniture to political pins, ephemera, and Ethan Allen objects as well. So please welcome Catherine F. Grant.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out on this really dreary afternoon. We made it a few days with some gorgeous weather, so I guess we were due, right? Thank you also to the Achenbach family for supporting not only this lecture, but this amazing property. Ethan Allen Homestead has been one of my favorite places to come for a very long time, so I was thrilled to be able to give this lecture and to know that it was sponsored. Legacy, we're talking about Ethan Allen's legacy today. We could talk about legacy through lecture series, just putting that out there. So without further ado, let's get started. Surprise, you're all getting quizzed. Which of these is an actual representation of Ethan Allen? None of them. Woo, look at you guys. Very good. Yeah, that's right, not a single one. One of the things that I love about what I do in my areas of interest within material culture is I'm looking at what objects can tell us. And when you talk about a figure, a person like Ethan Allen, who's of truly mythic proportions, not just in Vermont, but across the Northeast, you don't have a single image of him from that time period. So we really don't know what he looked like. So the only thing that we have to go on are documentary resources and other objects that he may or may not have touched. The may or may not have part is really important. When you get really important figures, especially when we're talking about founding members of the United States, George Washington, Ethan Allen, Thomas Jefferson, all these individuals, maybe even Betsy Ross, you come across things in all kinds of places, uncover things. Oh, George Washington slept in this bed in Litchfield, Connecticut. Well, the bed was probably made in 1830, so probably not. And we find the same thing is true with Ethan Allen, not just here in Vermont, but all over New England. I've come across people in Massachusetts, where I'm from, and Connecticut and Rhode Island who've said, oh, Ethan Allen was here. No, I'm sorry. We know where he went because he wrote so prolifically and everything, and he wasn't there. But there are ways that his objects, his belongings, and his family have transcended these borders and these boundaries of places that he actually went. And now we can look at them and figure out a little bit more about his life and his legacy and his impact here in Burlington and beyond. So what I want to show you today, we have a couple of things on slides, and then I brought some things for us to look at in person, because that's one of the perks of my job, is I get to handle cool stuff all the time. So I thought I'd bring it to show you. And we're going to look into some of the things in the collection at VHS that may or may not be related to Ethan Allen. So we're going to play a game with it too. Is it or is it not? You guys already aced it with this one. So not that I'm really that surprised, but I appreciated the confidence with which you all said no.
Are they all supposed to be likenesses of him?
Yes, every single one of those is supposed to be a likeness. So the one that you probably recognize the most is the one on the bottom right. That's Larkin Mead's sculpture outside of the state capitol building of Ethan Allen. One of the things that I love is when I was doing some research through a whole bunch of archives, but the VHS library, the Leahy Library Archives especially too, is I found a lot of early 20th century images of what Ethan Allen should have looked like. The one in the top left actually is one of my favorites. It screams bicentennial to me. It just has this look of, jaunty open collar and vest and the coloring and everything. And I think it's a little earlier, if I remember correctly, it's like an 1950s image. But every single one of those is fabricated. Not a single one is actually true. So we do have some really wonderful objects with actual ties to Ethan Allen in our collection. But the question is which ones are real and which ones are not really provable. First one I want to show you is this rifle, and it's on view in our museum in Montpelier. And I should say also, I'm going to back up for just a second. Vermont Historical Society was founded by state charter in 1838. We have been collecting since then, both museum and library materials. And so when you see the numbers on the screen, this one says 1876.1. This was the first item that was donated to the museum collection for VHS in 1876. So not our earliest object, but one of the earlier ones. And we've been able to retain it and put it on view for people now in 2025, which is pretty cool. So the rifle itself is from the later half of the 18th century. It does make sense when you look at it in person. I promise you it really is an 18th century piece. And it's got some interesting little hints to it. On the left, you can see where the brass is inscribed Ethan with some really pretty frills around it and everything. You can see someone polished it at some point, and the sort of chalky white color in there is polish that was left behind. On the right, the barrel itself is inscribed Allen with a backwards N. And when I saw this, I went, ooh, okay, what's going on here? One of those little details, things like this can really make a difference in some cases. And there's, a couple different things. Option one is it was a child who, or someone who was learning how to read and write, who can't quite figure out which way the N goes. It's a very relatable thing to try to figure out. What I think is the more likely scenario is it's someone in the later 19th century who intentionally made the N backwards to make it feel more old-timey, because that is also a thing that we see a lot, especially with things that are inscribed with a Revolutionary era provenance. So now I'll stop blabbing quite so much. What do you think? Ethan Allen related or no? Yeah, why not? No.
Those types of writing that people used in the late 18th century?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the writing on both of these, the one on the left, Ethan, the script is fairly good for the period. It's a kind of standard script, though. So, I mean, my handwriting's not that neat, but I could do something similar to that now if I wanted, and I've seen plenty of people do it. The one on the right is very standard block lettering. So that's pretty doable. Yeah. So it's a bit of a red herring. And I did that for you guys. You're welcome. Yes? No? We're not really sure. It's a really fun object, though, because it does have a great provenance. So supposedly in 1776, Colonel Ethan Allen, who was fighting as part of the Continental Army, gave this rifle to Captain Abraham Underhill of Dorset, Vermont. His family lovingly cared for it until 1876, when one of his descendants decided, it really has a bigger story to tell, and it shouldn't be with us, it should be in a museum, donating it to VHS. So it came with this story. The reason why I say yes with a question mark is because family provenance can be a double-edged sword. Just as a PSA, write it down. If you have a family story or a thing that has a tale with it, write it down. Maybe what your grandmother told you is correct. Maybe it's not. I've got plenty of stories on both sides of that coin in my own family. But things like this make for a really fascinating tale. We have no documentary evidence from that time period indicating that Ethan Allen gave anything to Captain Underhill. But that doesn't mean he didn't. So we don't really know.
And the rifle is like contemporaneous.
The rifle's contemporaneous. Exactly. So we're going with, yeah, it's very likely, but we're not 100% sure.
Do they have a relationship at all? Is there any evidence of that?
That is something that I didn't have a chance to fully look into. As best I can tell, it's highly likely they crossed paths, but other than that, we don't really have a whole lot documented. See, people are chuckling because you can tell. You can really pick things apart here.
Mm-hmm. He was a prisoner of war in England in 1776.
Bingo.
Unless,
And that's where this starts to fall apart, right? So that's the other piece is, yes, Ethan Allen was a prisoner of war in England in 1776. So our notes say circa 1776 because the connections between the family are plausible enough that he could have given this. But we don't know for sure, and we don't have any documentation to support it. So anyways, we've got more to get through, so let's keep going. This desk. So it's a mahogany desk. It's got also an interesting story in its own right. It actually belonged to Stephen Fay, who was the owner, proprietor of the Catamount Tavern in Bennington, Vermont. And if any of you don't know, the Catamount Tavern was like the seat of Vermont. Vermont decision-making and the creation of the Green Mountain Boys and the Vermont Militia and everything. So many seriously important people passed through its doors, stayed there overnight, had a meal. So the question is not whether or not this ever belonged to Ethan Allen, because we know for a fact it wasn't. The question is, did he ever use it?
because he ruled there.
Yep.
So Stephen Fay's my sixth great grandfather.
Oh, cool.
I was happy to see that in person. when
Oh,
I went
great.
To the historical museum.
Yep, it's in our museum in Montpelier. So what do you think? Did he use it?
He could have. Yeah.
Hey, we got one. Took us long enough. So yes, we know that this desk was actually used by Ethan Allen because of the way that the tavern was laid out, because of the way that Fay had everything organized, because of how the Green Mountain Boys came to be. Yes, which is pretty cool. So we have an actual legitimate thing now. So we've got a maybe and we've got a yes. Shoe buckles. I love shoe buckles. They're so weird. They're the most fascinating thing to me because I could not figure out as a kid how exactly they worked because it didn't quite make sense as a belt buckle. Anyways, these are from about 1770. We have plenty of other pairs, not just in our collection, but at other collections of 18th century American materials like Fort Ticonderoga, we've mentioned. And I love them because the glass is so wonderful in person. It's another thing that's in our museum, so I don't have it here with me today. But what was really cool about these, too, is that it's the metal frame, the glass beads, I guess you could call them, are glued on or adhered to the metal frame, and then they came with a set of leather and cardboard supports for the buckles to stay secured into before they came to VHS. So here's the question, did they belong to Ethan Allen?
I'm gonna say no.
Seem too fancy.
Too fancy? No.
What metal are they?
Iron. Yeah.
So they are, the glass beads and iron, we're not talking silver.
No, exactly. But they look really nice. And I have to be honest with you, they've been in a case at the museum for a good long while, and I check on them every time I go over there. And they don't need to be polished. So if you're looking for something durable, I highly recommend an iron and glass shoe buckle, everybody. So the other reason why we can, there's a couple other things at play here. Ethan Allen's family, his descendants, he had 5 children. No. 6, thank you. One of his great-granddaughters donated a number of things to VHS in 1923. So actually, if I go back a slide, you can see this is 1923.8. She donated a whole bunch of things to us in 1923 with a relationship to not just Ethan, but to Fanny, which is very cool. And these shoe buckles were one set. So they are of the right time frame, and they have the right family provenance, and the family after Ethan Allen did try very hard to document things, so we can be really pretty confident in what they shared with us within reason, and we'll get to that one in a moment. So yeah, they belong to Ethan Allen. This is I love a lot of our stuff. I love the thing that I looked at most recently. And this canteen is another really great option. So it's a wooden canteen, and if you think of it as like a miniature barrel, that's how it's constructed. So there's 2 round discs that have basically staves and an iron band around them to hold it together. And then one of the slats that you can just sort of see the top edge of has a hole drilled into it, and that's where you'd put your cap. So that's how you would drink from it as a canteen. It's seen better days. It's got some paint that someone put on and then took off. It's got EA written on it. It's got LG written on it. And this is one of the ones, I didn't have a whole lot of time to look into this particular one. So you guys are going to ask me a question about one of the names on the next slide, and the answer is I don't know. Do we think it belonged to Ethan Allen?
Do you know where it came from at all?
Mm-hmm.
Based on the year 1923, is it the same family donation?
It's a different person, but it's the same year. It's another question mark. So purportedly owned by Ethan Allen, Lewis Graves was a member of the 17th Regiment of the Albany Company militia. It's a militia that it's entirely possible that Ethan Allen came across. I don't know specifically the relationship there or how legitimate it is, but my favorite part is that a maid, not realizing the historical value, was using this as a flower pot until it was rescued by the donor. So this idea of rescuing a relic, right? I think we can use that word here, relic of Ethan Allen. Pretty funny. I mean, and so I put some red clover up there as a sort of a call out to the flower pot part of its story. It's possible that it had nothing to do with Ethan Allen. It was someone else named EA with the initials EA, but or someone who was inspired by Ethan Allen. But it's entirely possible based on some of the other provenance and about this donor's family that I can't share, but some of the donor's family information that's possible. If you find out more about Lewis Graves, anybody, let me know. Love to hear it. Okay. Oh, and this is great. So we're talking about legacy making here too, right? So this is not, I'm sorry the image is so washed out, but this is a really wonderful sort of student piece. So it was a student in Burke, in Burke, Vermont, with one of the best names, Augustus Porter Walter. How great of a name is that? Made this drawing in or for one of his classes in the mid-19th century. So he was born in 1834. So you're looking at this legacy of someone who died in 1789, and school children who are learning about the Revolution, who are learning about Vermont figures in the mid-19th century, are taking the time to put together these drawings and celebratory things for in honor of Ethan Allen, or inspired by Ethan Allen. It's got a combination of stencil work and freehand drawing, and the colors actually in person, they're faded over time, but they're a little bit more saturated than they showed up in this image. But Independence and Ethan Allen forever. Pretty interesting symbol.
Are those words at the top there in the boxes? Are those discernible, or is?
Yes. I can't remember. I can't remember what the one on the left says. The one on the right says penmanship. So one of the things that would happen in a lot of schools and a lot of educational programs, especially in the mid-19th century, would be penmanship exercises. And there would be a combination of things that you were required to copy and ornamental penmanship. There you go. Thank you, Angie. Yeah, you have it right there too. So it would be a combination of certain letters or forms you had to make sure were in your penmanship exercise, and components that you could take a little more creative license with. So if I had to guess, I would guess some of the bird sketches that are in the top corners are freehand. Well, I know they're freehand, actually. This is also on view in our research and exhibition gallery, so I've seen this in person. The birds are freehand. The monuments to either side are a combination. There's some stenciled elements with the diamond and spade designs, which I'm not really sure what that's about, so that's another research project. But the block lettering, I'm willing to bet that the person who did this, so Augustus, had to hit a certain number of letters in that type of font, in that block lettering, and this is what he chose to do with that. Interesting, kind of cool. And then Fanny. We have to talk about Fanny. We can't not talk about Fanny here. Frances Montresor Buchanan Allen Penniman, long name, was an incredibly remarkable woman, and I know a lot of you in the audience already know way more about her than I do. But just very quickly, she was Ethan Allen's second wife. Ethan was her second husband of three, hence all of the names. And she was a pretty incredible person. The portrait that you see here is in the collection at Fort Ticonderoga, and so special thanks to them for making their images and their collections so open and accessible online. It's really wonderful that they do. The portrait itself is attributed to John Singleton Copley. I haven't had a chance to chase that down at all. We don't think it is, though. It's a nice idea, but it doesn't make any sense. But this is her. We have an image of her. We don't have an image of Ethan, which is an interesting thing. We know different things about her. We know that she was really pretty resourceful in a lot of ways. She had to be. Her first husband was a British officer. He died very early on in the marriage. She could not access her widow's portion. Meeting and marrying Ethan meant that she could then access it, of course, under his name, which is infuriating. But she did get access to it. And then when the same thing happened 5 years later and Ethan Allen unexpectedly dies, she remarries again. And he helps her make sure, the Penniman makes sure that she continues to have access to certain financial and geographic, like land, that she had inherited or was holding on to in trust for her children. As a woman in that day and age, it was not easy. So the fact that she was able to continue on and provide for her children in that way is like really pretty impressive. We have some really wonderful things that relate to Fanny in the VHS collection as well. And one of them, I wanted to bring this to show you guys in person so much because it's just like the most beautiful little thing. It's a cowrie shell coin purse. And it was very popular in the late 18th century to take natural elements or components of the natural world, like seashells, and transform them into utilitarian objects, but on the fancy goods side of things. So the shell itself is polished and cut into, so a normal cowrie shell, I forget the terminology, but it curls in on itself underneath. So this is like the top that you would see, and then the shell itself curls in. That portion was cut off, and then a silver clasp was attached. So the shell itself is the purse, but then the lid is a sterling silver hinged piece that's seamed onto the edge of the cowrie shell. This was another one, I think, that was, yes, so this is that same great-great-granddaughter who donated a number of things to VHS in 1923. This is another one of those pieces between the age, between the design, the silver, and how it was made. This is absolutely an 18th century piece, and I'm very confident in saying that, yeah, this has connections to Fanny Allen. So Ethan adjacent, I guess, in that way. So I guess I didn't let you guys guess on that one, did I? I'm sorry. And then we get, so here we're going to bounce back and forth a little bit. I brought some things from the collection, as you probably saw when you came in, that are on the table over here. What I'm thinking now, if you guys are good with it, is we'll start with looking at things on the screen so you can actually see them. And then we can come up and look at them up close, and we can sort of cycle through and have it be a little bit more informal. Does that sound good to everybody? Cool. Thank you for nodding, those of you. So these earrings are like an interesting puzzle, and I'm not really sure what to make of them yet. They are brass and garnet, and they have the date of about 1760 on them, which more or less makes sense. But if you recall when Fanny was born, that's around the same year that these earrings supposedly were made. So I have questions, and I would love to talk to that great-great-granddaughter, if I can't talk to Fanny herself, about where exactly these earrings came from. Were they her mother's that she then got and then passed down through several more generations of women in the family before coming to VHS? Were they not really hers at all? Were they someone else's? We don't know. But they do come with pretty strong family provenance, which is pretty exciting. Also, the idea of putting a brass earring in is so fascinating to me. So we can look at them up close and see the clasp and everything in a little bit, because they're a really cool piece. But we'll see. I'm basically just giving you guys a bunch of mysteries and no answers today. So, oh yeah, this one's fun. So I also, we have a shawl. We have a number of other textiles in our collection. We have a fantastic textile collection. So if that's your area of interest and research, I highly encourage you to come talk to me and we can set up some research. But what happened in this family is the same that happens in a lot of other families, is there are certain things that just sort of get lumped in with the other things with really good provenance, and they're not quite right. And this shawl is one of them. So this came in being identified as Fanny's shawl. Not me, but one of my predecessors took one look at it and went, that doesn't really make sense. Looked at the weave, looked at the texture, looked at how the Morning Glory design was printed onto the fabric, and realized this is absolutely 1,000% not an 18th century garment. This is like 1830s to 50s. This is much later. So in the family, yes, a descendant of Fanny and Ethan, almost certainly, but Fanny specifically, definitely not. There you go. I gave you one definite.
Did she live until mid-1800s?
What am I trying to, hang on, let's just double check, because now there we go, 1834. Yep, so the date on the shawl is 1835 to 1850. I think that was someone being a little bit generous, I would say like 1845 to 1850 if I were looking at it. I was looking at it the other day. It's not really, it's a printed textile. It's not woven in. The way the tassels work, there's all kinds of wonderful resources about how long the fringe should be on your shawls and things at this time frame. It just doesn't really line up properly. So this button, there we go. This is another thing that I brought, I thought we could look at. It's a pewter plate, of course, and it's marked by an English, tinsmith is the term actually that's used. That's someone who works not just with tin, not just with pewter, but any sort of tin alloy, which is, you know, a mixture of different metals put together. And pewter is a really interesting material to work with because you can melt it, you can pour it into a mold, but power to you if you are able to manually work with it in any way, the way that you would do for like wrought iron or silver. It does not respond well to blunt force, even with heat involved. A lot of times it will just completely crack and shatter. So it's a very brittle metal. It was, however, also extraordinarily durable and was a lot of people's everyday wares for dining in the 18th and early 19th centuries. So we have a whole selection of pewter plates at VHS, one of which is this one. Samuel Ellis was active in the mid-18th century, so a little bit earlier on. This is one of the ones we could have a whole conversation about, like, did he not eat off of this plate? But this sole plate, the only one, not a set, but just this one plate was donated to us in 1940 as a plate that Ethan Allen ate off of at their ancestors' home in northern Vermont. Yeah, so. Oh, the silhouettes. Okay, so I think silhouettes are also really fascinating. They were considered a very high fashion thing to have your silhouette cut. In the early 19th century, again, already, we're after Ethan Allen has long since died. There are 18th century silhouettes out there, but does anyone know the name Peel family? Okay, so the Peel family is based in the Philadelphia area. They had one member in a generation was a pretty prominent artist of other political and society figures in early United States era, so the late 18th century, and named every single one of his children after artists. So there is a Rembrandt Peel, there's a Titian Peel. I'm trying to remember, one of the daughters has like the most unbelievable name. Of course, it's now escaping me, but it's just the most unbelievable commitment to craft. And one of those children put together the Peel Museum. This was the first museum in the United States. And it sort of went from a natural history museum and then had silhouettes of famous people. So this was actually given to VHS as a silhouette of Ethan Allen. We have several issues with that, you know. And one of the things that it's covered up in the back now, of course, so I can't show you, but on the back it says Peel Museum, Ethan Allen Peel Museum. Peel Museum closed in 1837. So not only do we have an issue here with Ethan Allen, no one actually knowing what he looked like, but we have a question mark about when this silhouette was made based on the paper texture and quality and when the Peel Museum closed. So another fun word to throw around is forgery. That could be this one. So there you go. There's a new word for us there. And then I think this is the last. Nope, I've got two more. This is the other one that's a lot of fun, though, and I've been waiting to show this one to you as well. So it's a bas relief, so it's a relief image of a person that's carved out of a flat surface, and so you still have the flat surface behind. So it's almost always profile like you see here. And it came in as a bas relief of Ethan Allen done by Horace Mills Abrams in 1940. Whole lots of questions there. But my favorite part is the inscription on the back, and I get to show you guys that in person a little bit, which will be really fun. General Ethan Allen from daguerreotype in Bennington Museum. Two issues with that. Anybody see them?
Well, daguerreotype.
Bingo, that's one. And general.
Oh, yeah.
He was a major general, but then he became a colonel, and that's the title that most people referred to him as. So we're already using a not quite right title. And then we keep reading. General Ethan Allen, scratched out Harrison, wrote above it Hitchcock, USA, of which his mother, Ethan Allen's daughter, wrote that she considered it the best likeness of the general. What in the world do we have going on here? And thank goodness for Ancestry. One of Ethan Allen's daughters from his first marriage, I believe, Lucy. Yes. Very well. Okay, so people really do know here. Okay. So Lucy married a lawyer from Vergennes named Samuel Hitchcock. And one of the plus minuses of having a family that's very proud of its lineage and its heritage is that you use the same names generation after generation. So the Allen family has dozens of Ethan Allens in it. Sometimes it's Ethan Allen Hitchcock, which is what we've got here. Sometimes it's Ethan Voltaire Allen, which was one of his sons. You've got all kinds of variations. So you have to pay really close attention to middle and last names and what comes where. Ethan Allen Hitchcock was Ethan Allen's grandson. He also was a prominent general for the United States and did, in fact, have his portrait taken multiple times as a career military man. His family also said over and over again, his mother in particular, "You are the spitting image of your grandfather. You look just like him." So what we have here is someone who said, well, if this person is Ethan Allen's grandson and he looks just like him, if I make a bas-relief or something using his image, then I've made an image of Ethan Allen, the original. So yeah. So we don't have Ethan Allen here, we have Ethan Allen Hitchcock. But maybe we also have Ethan Allen? I don't know. Does it count? And then I'll slide through these really, really fast. Another example, family names mattering here. Same theme is this spoon with E. Allen engraved on the end of the handle. It came in with a collection of amazing silver that was either made and or retailed in Vermont. This collector was fascinated with Vermont silver and donated almost the entire collection of spoons to us. So we have a really wonderful point of comparison for all those things. Coin silver just means that it was sterling silver that we used in coins that got melted down and made into other things. Sometimes it's more valuable, whether that's more meaningful to collectors or more valuable in the market, usually not. But this one came in to us because it came in as Ethan Allen's spoon. Couple of issues. One is you see the maker, Norton and Seymour, 1850. Ethan Allen is long since gone once again. And then a note that one of our, and I apologize for my typos, guys, my goodness. I pulled some of the notes from a previous researcher as well. And one of the things that they found out was that Ethan Voltaire Allen, who was Ethan Allen's son, one of his sons, would have been in the right place at the right time to have a set of cutlery engraved with his name, including a spoon like this. So it's thought to be his son's, not his. Doesn't really count. It's close, but not quite right. And then this last one, this is great. So who mentioned England before you did? So yes, we have a cannonball, which is really fascinating because it's a rock. It's a rock. Which those of you who know me and our collection of VHS know that there's another rock that I adore in our collection. This is going to add to that top 10 list for me, I think. But we have these objects that, I sort of referenced relics before, and I'm going to say it again. We have these relics towards people and events and moments in Vermont history within our collection. And one of those moments is Ethan Allen's imprisonment during the Revolutionary War. So we have a brick from the jail cell building, and we have apparently a cannonball that was thrown into the building at some point, hypothetically during his imprisonment. If any of you are experts in rocks, I really would love your thoughts on what this thing looks like to you when you have a chance to come up and take a peek, because I'm not really sure about this. And you can also see, maybe you can just make out that there's an old paper label that someone had taped on to make sure that the story stayed with the object, that this was thrown or shot at Ethan Allen's cell, when he was there. And I put in here that it was a transfer from the Fletcher Free Library. One of the things that we are really lucky to have across the state are wonderful institutions like the Homestead, like VHS, like libraries. And everyone, we try really hard to work together in terms of preserving and sharing our state's history. So libraries will end up with museum objects that they maybe don't really have a good home for, and they'll talk with us. We'll end up with library materials that maybe make more sense at somewhere like Fletcher, or the Pringle Herbarium actually is another great example at UVM. And this was an instance in 1965 where a couple of volunteers went down into the basement at the library and found a bunch of stuff that no one knew was there, didn't know what to do with it, called us, and we ended up with several cannonballs related to several different Vermonters, Ethan Allen being the most prominent of them all, and they were all sort of like in this wire basket and transferred to us. So we'll hold on to them, we'll keep telling their stories and using them to illustrate Ethan Allen's story, as well as many others. It illustrates our own collecting story, which is pretty cool, so.
Is there any indication of what prison cell and where? He was in quite a few
I know,
prisons.
there's none. I look, yeah. Yes.
Here in England.
Right, well, and that's the thing too, is the brick that we have in our collection says that it was from the prison where he was jailed in England. This one doesn't say. So, I mean, and it's also a rock, so like who knows where it came from. But yeah, so that's sort of what I've brought for you today, and I hope I didn't muddy the waters too much. I did have a little bit of fun toying with everybody here in terms of figuring out, you know, we can make things really, really complicated. It's really hard to make things simple and answer a simple yes or no question with a yes or a no. And when it comes to Ethan Allen, there's no such thing as a simple yes or no answer, I've discovered, for pretty much anything. So we have to rely on the objects to help us figure out what's the truth and what's not. Thank you.
Can you say what VHS stands for?
Yes, thank you. VHS is Vermont Historical Society. Yeah, and so you'll see this has a VHS-A number next to this painting because the way we used to catalog things was categorically, so VHS for Vermont Historical Society, A for art, 25 is the 25th piece of art cataloged in our collection. We don't use that system anymore. We use the date system that I referenced earlier. But some of the artwork still sort of lingers with this older system. I also, you know, this is a 1948 painting of interpretation of Ethan Allen, and that's the artist's title, Ethan Allen Interpretation. It's also the only interpretation or image of him that I've come across that shows him with like sort of blonde hair. And I have some questions for that artist about that. Like, you know, did we just presume he has brown hair, or... I mean, like I said, we don't know, but I find it interesting, so, cool.
Anybody else have questions, please?
Yeah.
Does the Vermont Historical Society have a first edition copy of the Reason, the only Oracle of Man?
You are the one who asks the questions now. I don't know. If we did, it would be in the library collection, and I'm on the museum side, so I work with our objects rather than the archival side of things. So we can find out, though, after. We can look it up.
I think the answer I got was that there was one, but it's been amended several times, so it's not in pristine condition and
That would make sense.
not the way you would expect it to be as a first edition.
Yeah. We can look that up and see. First editions oftentimes are very hard to preserve because they are so loved and used by so many different people. So when things have been mended a lot, they do. Sometimes we can't really use them as much as we'd like to, but yeah, we can look into it. I might be able to find out what condition it's in and everything. Yes?
For things like the cannonball, it's actually a rock, and you get, you know, a call from someone at the Fletcher Free Library. We have a rock but it says that it's a cannonball. Like, what is the process of elimination there, where you're like, does this cannonball that was almost definitely not, you know, related to Ethan Allen why this particular example of, you know, a or like a historical thing with a almost definitely fallacious history, that, like,
So-
why this thing or like not another thing?
So I think, okay, this is where I have fun in the weeds again, right? Which you guys have been on a journey with me on this at this point. It's in our system. It's cataloged as a cannonball. And we have actual cannonballs in the collection as well from other conflicts and things. But you look at this and it's got striations. It's definitely a rock. But we've kept it as a cannonball. I guess it would more accurately be termed as a projectile. You know, maybe.
They stuffed all kinds of stuff in cannon.
Also that, right, like, was it stuffed in the cannon? Hey, therefore cannonball, or projectile, but cannonball sounded better even if someone was throwing it.
Wait, don't tell me today, they were talking about potatoes having been used.
I have to listen to that. I haven't listened yet today. Potatoes are another whole thing we could talk about in Vermont history, believe it or not. So yeah, terminology matters, but terminology also changes over time, and depending on the context, sometimes even if one word isn't like the most accurate, it's the better choice to make sure that the most people understand what you're talking about. I would imagine that that's sort of the case here. I could change it to projectile, but we also have projectile points in our collection, and so I've left it as cannonball because a projectile point is like an arrowhead, basically. And I think that it's much easier for someone to imagine, even if it was thrown as opposed to shot from a cannon, it's easier to imagine that as a cannonball, even if it's not quite right, when you have a projectile point in the next drawer over, or you're scrolling through online in our catalog.
So how did it come to be at?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, yeah. But it came to us in 1965, so it's been with us for quite some time. Yeah. Yes?
For the process of dating, do you use, or when do you determine to use some of these more exotic things like carbon dating, isotope detection, pollen, interpretation, those kinds of things that
Yeah.
can be more exotic and expensive probably, but when do you say, okay, we need to investigate this further using those methods?
How much do you know about how those methods are used?
Not much.
Okay, so that is a great question, and I realize the question that was asked is when do you jump away from what we call connoisseurship, so intense looking and investigation and comparison to other similar or different things, to things like carbon dating, isotope analysis, other scientific metrics. And the answer gets a little convoluted. Number one, those are very expensive tests. We in historic houses, museums, and historical societies usually don't have super deep pockets. And so if we are going to use those kinds of scientific tests, we are going to need a little extra financial support to be able to do them. So we are very careful to think about what we're trying to do and the long-term goal before we embark on any sort of investigation. The other thing about some of those tests is they can be highly invasive. So you're taking a sample, you're taking a core out of an object that's in our collection in order to test it. That means you need to take a certain portion of it. And if we're talking about an earring, you're destroying the earring to do some of that work. Isotope analysis, not so much. But for certain things, you're potentially destroying the object. And at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself whether that's worth it. So yeah, it comes down to cost, availability, and potential harm to the object itself, because these objects are not just things that we can test with, they're also stories in their own rights. So it's a balance that we try to hit with it.
It could be good with the rock, though.
It could be great with the rock, you never know.
I've always had a question about the Fanny portrait.
You're gonna ask me something I probably don't know the answer to, but I'll try.
I'm under the impression, but I don't, have exact data or anything, but that portraits like that could have had quite a bit of it painted in. The scenery in the background, the bird on her hand, maybe the sewing basket she's holding that doesn't really show up here. Even the wig and the silk dress like that.
Mm-hmm.
Is that accurate to say that pretty much all of that could have been painted in?
As opposed to specifically belonging to her.
Right.
Yeah, that's possible. We do see that.
It's
So,
ornate and so fancy.
yeah,
She even it makes her look like she has a Queen Elizabeth I receding or plucked,
Wasn't her
hair.
early life though with a well-to-do family in New York City? Right?
yeah.
You probably remember better than I do, but I'm getting that impression
Yeah.
that she came from somebody who had some money, so.
She had money, she had yeah, if you could, that would be great.
The curator in charge of this portrait and all the artifacts at Fort Ticonderoga, Matthew Kegel, he does not think it's a John Singleton Copley.
Yeah.
He does think it was a traveling artist in upstate New York who may have been more likely to have like kind of a stock portrait that he would maybe then just put the face on and have the customer in front of him. That was common back then, but we don't know for sure.
I mean, my understanding is it wasn't like he was a millionaire, he was a government official or something, but.
Well enough to get her portrait.
Right.
Right.
To get her
Yes.
portrait painted.
Right.
To have a gown like that for an 11-year-old, it's always just what I've wondered.
Yeah, no,
Very
it's
fine gown.
it's a very nice silk gown. There's a lot of symbology that this could be a whole other talk. There's so much symbolism and interpretation that goes into portraiture of this era. There's a ton of really great scholarly books about it too, and talking about how certain things mean, like certain styles of gowns, certain flowers, certain pets mean different things to different people in this time, and what you choose to have in your portrait or your child's portrait shifts how you want that person to be perceived by the audience you're trying to show it to, whether that's your friends and neighbors or you're trying to climb a social ladder and things like that. So I would not be surprised if there are all kinds of little Easter eggs in this portrait about some of the things that they were trying to do or allude to with Fanny's portrait here.
I think her aunt was painted at the same time, but I don't.
She
know
was,
if
yeah,
has it.
you would remember better than I would, but,
I've never seen a picture.
yeah.
Landscape is totally inappropriate to New York.
She just said the landscape is totally inappropriate to New York, and 100% right. And a lot of times you'd have these sort of fanciful like backdrops that would be sort of ready to go. Yeah, no, that does not look like New York to me either, right?
Since we're on this topic, then I'll just, to close out the conversation
Yeah.
on this portrait, I would all like to make a little plug for Fort Ticonderoga. Their new exhibit that just opened
Yeah, it's great.
features this portrait in like front and center primary spot in the exhibit. They just had it refurbished, so it's in person. You can see the detail in the background a lot better than what you can see in this picture, which was scanned before the refurbishing.
Yeah, they had a fantastic conservator work on it for months, I think, to really get it up. I'm excited. I haven't seen it in person since it was conserved, so I'm very excited to go back and see it later this summer.
I got
But
to see it, and it's actually much larger than I thought it would be.
it's a big painting, yeah.
Do they also have the one of the aunt?
That one's being refurbished as we speak.
But they own it.
Yes, her mother / her aunt.
Her
a little
mother, that's-
unclear.
Yeah.
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 I wonder if it's just as grand.
We'll have to go and see.
So, Katie, do you
Do you
have
wanna-
a process that you'd like to show or have us get up close?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it's maybe time if you wanted to stretch your legs, take a peek. So I'm gonna stand up here with the objects. I know it's very tempting, but I do ask that you not touch. But I'm happy to turn anything over for you so you can see different sides and the back of things. And continue asking questions. You'll see I use gloves for certain things and not for others, which is another sort of materials area of interest for me. So anything that's metal, you want to use gloves because you leave fingerprints. Paper, you want clean hands, for example, because that way you can feel the texture. You're much more susceptible to ripping paper if you use gloves. Just as a PSA for anyone who's working with old documents and books. Yeah, so yeah.
So logistically,
Yeah.
not everyone's gonna be able to go up to the table at the same time. I would like to encourage you to visit the snack table once again.
Please
Our
do,
wonderful
yes.
Volunteers, Margaret and Maida, brought the refreshments today. Thank you. You can also visit the gift shop or the displays here in this room, but also if you haven't yet, check out our brand new exhibit across from the gift shop, Voices of the Revolution, where we partnered with local artists to feature some untold stories from the revolution in there. And if you're interested in like portraiture and whatnot, in that exhibit there's a few AI generated portraits of those historical figures, so you can go take a look at some of the symbolism that AI came up with to depict those people as well. Thank you very much, Katie.
Thank you. So before we finish out the presentation today, I just wanted to show you a couple of things that I was able to bring up from Vermont Historical Society's collections that relate to Ethan Allen in varying degrees. This first one is this silhouette, and it has a new backing on it, but the original backing says Ethan Allen Peel Museum. And the Peel family was a very prominent political and artistic family in primarily in the Philadelphia area in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. And one of the things that they did support was some of the earliest museums in this country, and they had a whole silhouette museum collection. We know that there's no images of Ethan Allen. So this is not Ethan Allen, and it never was at the Peel Museum, as best we can tell, which closed in 1837, by the way, and this silhouette almost certainly postdates when that closed. On the same topic, we have this bas-relief. So bas-relief basically just means it's a profile carved out of a flat surface, also supposedly of Ethan Allen, done in 1940. And it's got an inscription on the back that I'm not sure how well you can see it, and we'll try to read it upside down here. Can't do that. General Ethan Allen, from daguerreotype in the Bennington Museum of General Ethan Allen. Harrison is scratched out with Hitchcock written above it, USA, of which his mother, Ethan Allen's daughter, wrote that she considered it the best likeness of the general. So this was an inscription that was added in later, and there's a lot of different things that we can learn from this inscription. Number one, our Ethan Allen became a colonel, not a general. He was a major general early on in his military career, but became a colonel, and that's how he's known when we speak of his military titles. So already, not him. Number two, daguerreotype. Definitely not him, because daguerreotype technology was created and developed long after Ethan Allen died. His grandson was Ethan Allen Hitchcock. So this bas-relief is almost certainly of Ethan Allen Hitchcock, done based off of a daguerreotype that we know exists because there are tons of likenesses of Hitchcock. The other thing that's really interesting is Hitchcock's mother, Lucy, said that her son was the spitting image of her father over and over and over again. So someone definitely took an image of Ethan Allen Hitchcock and must have said, oh, well, if I get an image of him, I have an image of Colonel Ethan Allen. Perfect, done. I don't think that's how that works, though. We've got a beautiful set of brass and garnet earrings here that belonged to Fanny, and they're really interesting material-wise because the clasp actually attaches behind the stone, behind the setting, which is really unusual in modern jewelry at the very least. And then there's this later, I think it's a later added hoop here, maybe for someone to hang it this way so that they didn't lose the earring as much. Those clasps, as you can see, it's just come apart again, even though I'm holding it. These clasps have seen better days, and they don't always last very well. If we lean over this way, this is supposedly a cannonball that was shot towards Ethan Allen's prison cell. We don't know which prison cell. We also can see it's a rock. Was it shot from a cannon as part of a projectile? Was someone picking up rocks and throwing them through? We're not sure. It was a transfer from another institution. So we have some information about it, but not a lot. So that's another one. We're really relying on the provenance that came with the piece for now. This silver spoon is engraved E. Allen on the end of the handle, and it came from a retailer of silver that was active in the 1850s. So we're pretty sure this is actually Ethan Voltaire Allen's or his descendants, which is one of Colonel Ethan Allen's sons, rather than Ethan Allen himself, because the dates don't quite match up. And then finally, we've got this pewter plate. It's got the mark on the back of Samuel Ellis, who was a London silversmith. It's hard to see, but it's right in the center here. And Ellis was active in the earlier part of the 18th century, 1725 to 48, if I remember correctly. And it's entirely possible that this type of pewter was ordered and shipped to Vermont to be used in a whole variety of homes. It was a very popular, basic dining utensil. But it was donated by a descendant of a family that supposedly hosted Ethan Allen for dinner a few times. So there you have it, just a couple of things in our collection that maybe speak to Ethan Allen's story, but maybe not.
Thanks, Katie.
Sure.